End-of-Life Option Act are in favor of people having choice of how, where, and when they die when they're dealing with a terminal illness. The vast majority of physicians are in favor of aid in dying. The majority of physicians would want this option available to them if they were dealing with a terminal illness. So why is it that we're still fighting this fight? So it makes no sense. And personally, having been with enough people who have had to go through their illness to the bitter end and seeing what happens, and now being able to be with people who have made the other choice, the choice to take control and to have this option, to have a peaceful, gentle death at the time and place of their choosing with the people who they choose to be with. I can't imagine going back. I can't imagine having to go back. I realize part of the reason I'm so passionate about this is because this is what I want for me. This is what I deserve. I feel like if I was diagnosed with a terminal illness tomorrow, I would do whatever I could to maximize my life. I would fight it. I would look at all the options, but I want that choice at the end. I want to be able to create the most beautiful, peaceful, dignified end of life. And I look out among this group, and I see a number of people who have had that experience, some of them very recently, within the last week or months. So we know what's at stake. We know what it's like to be part of this beautiful, transformative experience, and we all deserve that. So we're in a very strange place because we don't really know what's happening. We don't know what's going to happen, what's going to be in the news tomorrow, or what's going to be in the news on Tuesday. This rally, this demonstration of support may turn out to be unnecessary in terms of everything may go forward without a hitch in the short term, but we still are. It's obvious that there is still opposition, and we need to speak from the heart. We need to tell the truth. We need people to know what it's like to be with people who are dying, and to support them in having the most beautiful, most peaceful death possible.
Hear, hear.
Here. I feel so grateful to have Debbie here, because Debbie was at the very start of all of this.
Thank this little girl right here.
That's right.
The bravest woman on earth.
She's with us. She's right here. She's surrounding us, and she's within us. And we need to, if we don't fight for this, if we don't feel the outrage of having something potentially taken away from us, then we're not honoring Brittany for what she did, what she sacrificed, and the commitment that she made. And then Debbie and Gary's fight to carry on her legacy. So I would love for you to share whatever comes out from your heart right now to be a critical part of this. Yeah, there. You want me to take this?
Thank you. Well, I just spoke with a news station outside, so I'm a little jittery. But I want to thank you for coming today. And I want to urge everyone to remain strong and calm and purposeful. That was a description of my daughter. In the face of a brain tumor, she remained strong and calm and purpose-filled. And that's what Californians are going to have to do in the face of news, daunting news like this. I urge you to not be too nervous yet. I think we need to gain more information before we go into panic mode, but I don't consider communicating with our representatives as being panic mode. And I can tell you from having walked the halls of the Senate and the House and meeting with representatives and senators, they do listen. They do have someone pick up their phone. They tally who calls and who says, I'm appalled, and who says, I support this. And they listen and they do tally their emails. And so you do matter. What you do does matter. And my main message to Californians is 3 out of 4 of you want this law to remain in effect. So if we stop being a silent majority and we start being an outspoken and civilized majority, I think we can stop feeling so powerless. And we can start feeling like we have some control out of our own destiny. As Dr. Bob said, I want this law for myself someday, and I hope it's not tomorrow, but someday I may be faced with a doctor telling me, you have a terminal illness. Because of the stress that I've been through, there's some correlation with cancer and high levels of stress. It's certainly something that's gone through my mind. And so, not only do I have my love for my daughter and what she called her legacy. She said, Mama, I can't leave you grandbabies. I can't make you a grandma. But I think with my last days of my life, I can make you proud, and I can stand up for something, and I can stand up for other people who are ill and who are so tired, Mom. And she was so tired. Some days she just said, I can't take another television camera. I'm so tired, Mom. But there are people who are so tired. They've been fighting a terminal illness for a long time. And their voice is quiet, and they whisper in their doctor's ear, and they hope he listens. And I've heard today's talk, and I commend you on making this so clear because of who I am. A lot of terminally ill people and their families reach out to me, and the story I hear over and over again is, we waited too long. We waited too late. So I'm sharing that with you. And you need to make of that what you can make of it. Because if your loved one is asking you for help and they're saying they want to do this, even if they never decide to use this law, if they're asking you to help them, my advice would be to listen. We have patient autonomy. We've been given that right by the federal government. We have the rights over our own bodies. We have the rights over our own health care. And yes, dying is part of health care. Living and dying, that's the one thing we can count on. We're all gonna die. So I'm saying, basically, don't tell me how to die, and don't tell me how much I have to suffer. If you want to suffer, and you think suffering is beautiful, I've watched my daughter suffer, and there was nothing beautiful about it. So don't tell me that their suffering is beautiful. You want to do that? Please go do it. That's your belief, and I would never step in between you and say, oh, that's dumb, your plan is ridiculous. Our plan when we're dying is all that we have. It's what keeps us sane every day. It's what keeps us breathing calmly between the diagnosis and the death. our plan. My daughter had everything planned. She wrote everything down, she reviewed it, she sent out emails, she wanted you to confirm that you understood. The plan is everything. The procedure is everything. We just had a judge say that he was worried about procedure. Well, you know what? I would urge him to worry about the procedure that a lot of people are going through right now, the procedure of dying. And their procedure, their plan, means everything to them. And let's not tell other people how they need to die. When my daughter was dying, someone sent me a little picture of an elephant and its baby walking down the road. And it said, we're all here walking each other home. Let's just hold each other's hand and listen to each other. And if you want to try every medical procedure, and I love you, I'm going to hold your hand and I'm going to go to those appointments with you, and I'm going to be your advocate. I'm going to walk you home through all those procedures. But if you don't want to do all those procedures, and I love you, I'm not going to talk you into them, and I'm not going to make you do them, and I'm not going to tell you that suffering is beautiful. Because I know I watched someone suffer. It wasn't beautiful to me. So, that's my message today, and I do this in honor of the bravest woman I ever met, my own child. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce you to a woman who I consider to be a dear friend, who I didn't even know about 1 month ago. Was that just a month and a half ago? I kind of feel like she's kind of become one of my adopted mothers. I lost my mother almost 4 years ago, so I'm always looking for new mothers.
You're making me very old.
I'm only 33.
I'll take it.
There you go. So I wanted to have Barbara, we have a couple of folks, I wanted to ask Barbara to share a little bit about the journey that she was on. And I think for those of you who haven't gone through this, you hear about it, you hear the description of the process, and you maybe imagine what it's like to be in this place. But hearing from somebody who had to sit with their husband of 30 years,
Almost 30 years.
the love of her life, to have these conversations about whether this was the right choice, whether this was the right time. And it's interesting, sometimes we meet with people who are so completely resolute. This is exactly what I want, and I know when I want to do it, and there's just really no question. And sometimes we meet folks who are very ambivalent about it, and there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of discussion and a lot of time, and Barbara's husband was at the second. He was, he didn't want to struggle, but you know what? He didn't want to miss a moment of time with her, and that was the big, the big factor. But she supported him so beautifully on every possible level, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the experience was like?
Thanks. Debbie, I just want to say to you that when I had a virulent form of cancer, I followed Brittany's story night and day, in every newspaper, on every television, anywhere I could get it, because that was my wish too. Unfortunately, the tables were turned. I became well, and my husband died 6 weeks ago with the most beautiful time spent together through Dr. Bob's guide. I didn't even know you were sitting there. Dr. Bob's guidance and Elizabeth's guidance, taking us through the process. I was the one who was stunned, and so was Gideon. His name was Gideon Seaman. He was a psychiatrist, he was a doctor, and he believed in sustaining life at all costs because he helped so many people and he would never give up himself. However, when he was diagnosed with a virulent form, of liposarcoma, which was inoperable, and there really was no treatment for it, he did try a trial of a breast cancer drug for advanced breast cancer, but it was to no avail. He had a 15 to 25 pound tumor in his gut that kept growing. There was no chance that it wouldn't strangle him and weaken all his muscles and also affect his cognition, which is indeed what happened. We went to a lecture about Dr. Uslander's group, Integrative Medical Care, at the library in La Jolla. It was there that I knew that, that I fell in love with the type of treatment and care that Dr. Bob was giving. We went home and we discussed it at length. We were already in hospice with Sharp Hospice Care. We're going to start the process with our primary care physician. She really did not know what the process was, and she had to get in touch with other people to find out. In the interim, Dr. Bob came along, thank God, and we contracted with him. He did come to the house the next day and went through the alternatives for Gideon. The biggest selling point was the fact that we could get the medication, but my husband did not have to use it. He was not ready to use it. He wasn't even sure he wanted to use it. But we got it, and I had it in the house for him to use whenever he felt the time was right. Dr. Bob and Elizabeth supported us, I can't tell you in how many ways. My husband had his dignity. My husband had all his medical questions answered. My husband had comfort care through Dr. Bob. My husband was told all the alternatives to his options with whether he took the medicine or he didn't take the medicine. Gideon was a very special human being. He had a good sense of humor, and when he really couldn't listen to Dr. Bob anymore, he'd either tell a joke or he'd go off on a tangent. And Dr. Bob would sit there very calmly, very comfortably, and say, okay, and then redirect him to the question at hand. And through that, they developed a very warm trust with each other because they were equals. That's the way Dr. Bob and Elizabeth treated everyone. And I have to speak to his treatment of me. I was naive. I was scared. I was very possessive and protective of my husband. And I asked questions, and never once did I ever feel put down, belittled, lesser than. The two men that were in the room talking about death and dying. It was an experience of intimacy, loving, caring, compassionate, and empathic time, and I'm so grateful for it. On the day that my husband, well, let me backtrack a minute. Gideon kept saying, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. He was getting weaker and weaker. He went from being able to stand to a walker to a wheelchair. Once he got into the wheelchair, he couldn't navigate anymore. He fell twice, he hurt himself twice. He went through that. The bathrooms were off limits, commode time was in place. We did have caregivers, thank God, and they helped me through it and certainly helped my husband through it. But he was the anchor, definitely the anchor. The anchor in a way that touched my soul, because I didn't think that any outsider in the medical profession would ever be that supportive, that empathic, and that caring. It was worth all the money that we paid for care. It is not
$1 million.
covered. That's
It was
right.
$1 million.
That's
It was
right.
worth every
It's
penny.
not covered by Medicare. Nothing was covered, and we took a big sigh at that point. We were covered by Medicare through hospice, but we decided that this was certainly the better route, and I'm so grateful for it. On the day that Gideon died, well, Dr. Bob came the day before and said that he probably would only have another 10 days left. And Gideon said, I'm so done. I'm ready. And Dr. Bob said, I have time at 10 o'clock the next morning. And he said, let's go for it. And that's what happened. And I think the biggest angst for me was emptying the capsules and making it, putting the powder together and putting the water in. Luckily, I did not have to do that myself. Elizabeth helped and supported me all the way across the board. My husband kept asking, is it ready? Is it ready? And we kept stalling because Dr. Bob had a flat tire that day. He was late, and Gideon was ready, so what do you do? Anyway, the doorbell rang just as we were about to hold the glass to give him the medication. Dr. Bob walked in. Dr. Bob held the glass to give him the medication. He drank it.
Drank by himself through a straw.
Yes, he did. And he didn't use a straw. He drank it. And he said, this is awful. And he took some chocolate milk and he drank the second glass and he fell asleep peacefully in 2 minutes. And he died within 5 to 7 minutes. It was so peaceful, so beautiful, so intimate, so loving, and so real. And I can't advocate enough for this group, Integrative MD Care. It was just, I must say that I never speak publicly, but I decided that this is too important to let go because I want the same thing for you.
Thank you. So this was not a paid advertisement. So, and you know, I get uncomfortable, a little bit uncomfortable, of hearing this, but at the same time, it's like, don't we all want that? Isn't that what we all want and deserve, is to have that kind of relationship at the most critical time of life when we're real, and I'm hoping that there are others out there who are able to provide that. I don't know, but that's just become such an important part of our mission here, is to be able to create those relationships and to provide that kind of support, that kind of love and comfort, and having this law in place for the past couple of years has given us such an opportunity to come in to people's lives, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people contact us and we have the conversations about the End of Life Option Act and all the other options, and they never join the practice or they never even go down that path, but they've gotten more informed and they know they have the information that they need and they don't have to wait 3 weeks for an appointment and then go and ask somebody about it who really doesn't know anything about it. So it really feels, this wasn't anything that we ever planned, this wasn't a path that was anticipated, but now that this need is there, it feels so right to be able to fill it in a way that is ethical, moral, legal, and really it just deeply resonates with my heart and my values, and I know Elizabeth, who's really been walking this walk along the way. So does anybody else want to share an experience that they had that could be helpful for the group to hear? And again, it's not about us and Integrated MD Care, this is about the options available, it's about our right to choose how we want to take our last breaths.
I just wanted to say that Brittany always said, don't call 911. No matter what happens to me, Mom, don't call 911. Because we were talking about the pulse and your legal directions regarding when you're end of life, all bets are off inside an ambulance. They do not have to honor any of that. And so I think that's an important piece of information. And I'll ask you if that's true, but my daughter always did her homework.
Yeah, well, I mean, the post is a legal document. However, if you've got a person who's unresponsive and their family members are there yelling at the paramedics to do everything, doesn't matter what they said, what the person wrote on their form. It's really difficult for the paramedics, or if you're in the emergency room, to disregard these family members who are clearly frantic and panicked and sometimes aggressive. So doing something as an ER doc for 20 years, I can tell you that it is very difficult to look somebody in the eye and say, I hear what you're saying, but they said that they didn't want to be resuscitated, so I'm not going to do it. You can't. It's very difficult to honor it in those circumstances.
I was told that when you call 911, they have to resuscitate.
No, that's not true.
No.
They do not have to if you have documentation that indicates your wishes. But that doesn't mean that they're going to honor it all the time. Sorry. Sorry. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I didn't forget, I was nervous, about family members. My family visited, but they were back in New York. I'm from the Northeast. We moved to California almost 10 years ago. 6.5 as permanent residents. We started out as snowbirds. Anyway, my daughter was back in New Jersey. Another daughter was in Jerusalem. The point is that Elizabeth and Dr. Bob reached out and were available on the phone when she was concerned about me and when she was concerned about her stepfather. It was so reassuring to her and so reassuring to me because I did not feel her anxiety on the phone after speaking to Dr. Bob and speaking to Elizabeth. It really was a saving grace, and I needed to put that in too.
Thank you. Mary Ann?
Yes.
Did you want to say anything? Are you leaving?
I was going to sneak out.
Did you have something you wanted to share
Yes.
before you sneak out?
Yes.
Now you're not going to sneak out.
Well, no, I can't sneak
It
out.
won't be
I was
sneaky.
looking at them.
Do you want to? Can you come and speak into the microphone?
I can do that. Although I don't think with my voice it's necessary.
Get up here.
I'll do it for weaker ears, not weaker voices. No, thank you. No, I will stand. In this process today, I have written down a few notes that were just come to mind on this. I have recently helped a friend on the 10th of May, and she chose to go on that day because it was Assumption Day. She thought it was... Exactly. fête de l'Assomption, and she said, that's perfectly reasonable for me, and she deserved it. Had she known that this might have happened, that this law would be jerked out, she would have been absolutely frantic. And to add that to her end of life would have been unconscionable. So, it went extremely well. She did understand that the mixture would not taste very good. So when I asked, what would you like with it? Would you like juice? Would you like? No, I want to go with Gentleman Jack. So we bought her some Jack Daniels, and that was the liquid that we mixed. And she said, she chug-lugged that thing. And she said, oh, this is not so bad. And then we gave her a Jack Daniels chaser. And she said, oh, when is this going to take place? Oh, and it took her about a minute and a half, and she said, oh, I'm starting to feel sleepy. Oh, I'm starting to feel sleepy. Can you imagine anyone being that pleased and with it to be grateful of her journey, because it is just another step. She went to her poetry group the day before. They exchanged all kinds of poems, and she was ready to go. So she said, now's the time, you ready? I was slow, but that's the way it goes. But she was joyous, and her family was as well. But my little points were, be prepared. We all like to be prepared. When I moved to California, I exchanged my snow emergency gear in the car for earthquake survival kit. I carry a complete earthquake survival kit in the car. I want to be prepared for all kinds of things that are going to happen to me in my life, and hopefully in the winding down of my life as well. I was reminded as well of comments made by my husband, who unfortunately was not able to take advantage of this law. He died 7 years ago of myelofibrosis, which is rather nasty. And he reminded me of the movie Solid Green, which some of you may remember. And that's the way he wanted to go. He wanted to have beautiful music playing, have his beautiful visions of what was surrounding him, and die in a plain, simple, comfortable, honorable way. He would have been very pleased to have this be his end-of-life choice. He was not able to do that, but he was a strong person, and to the end he chose to go without food or hydration, and then of course he ran out of blood, so it really didn't matter. It happened quicker than he expected, but not quick enough, and not with the dignity that he had wanted. And it was with dignity that we had joined Hemlock many, many years ago and made all the provisions we could to be prepared for any eventuality. Because you don't have to be old with an illness to be incapacitated. I could get hit by a truck this afternoon and want to be able to have a reasonable way to end my life. It's not just for us old fogies who are dying of some terrible disease. There's a lot of other things that go on in our life. So I think that we need to be proactive again and get to our members of the assembly and get to the state, get to everyone we can. I've made notes of everyone that I can read. All of those people are available easily on the internet. You can find out who your member is for your area if you do not know, and get on the phones and send emails. Thank you. Yes, I did.
Yeah, you can't escape yet.
Oh, I can't leave yet, sorry.
We're holding you hostage.
Yeah.
I mentioned this before, not to throw cold water on the End of Life Option Act. We are very grateful that we have it, and the way Bob described these deaths is beautiful. But it could be much better if we had a better law. So we are not only an educational group, but we do agitate. And we would like to see the law expanded. We didn't know at this point that it would be withdrawn. We wanted to see it grow. We think that terminal illness is not necessarily a good criterion. It's not the criterion that's used abroad in Holland or Canada or Belgium or any of those places. It is whether you are suffering unbearably. Many people who have 6 months to live don't suffer, and many people who suffer unbearably can live a long time, years, months, whatever, from neurological diseases and other things. We think a 15-day waiting period is way too long. It should be reduced. Maybe not only doctors should do this, but other people as well. I just want to compare this to the Canadian law, which you can't use because you have to be eligible to use the Canadian healthcare system. But if you were a Canadian, you could get, besides self-administration, you could get a lethal injection, that's called voluntary euthanasia. Many people prefer that because some people can't swallow at the end, it tastes bitter, they can't get the medication, etc. In Canada, you can get a lethal injection, and over 90% of the people that have died, their law was passed the same time our law was passed. And over 2,000 people have taken advantage of that law in Canada, mostly by lethal injection in the hospital. It is so much easier. Doctors don't seem to have a reluctance to do that. It's paid for by the healthcare system there. It's a 10-day waiting period, which can be waived if you're very ill, and you need to have a shorter waiting period. Not only doctors do it, but nurse practitioners do it. They are now, there's a big legal case in Canada to expand the criteria so that minors, as somebody asked before, minors who are suffering with parental consent can use such a law. In some provinces there's mandatory referral. In California there is no mandatory referral. If your doctor doesn't want to do it, too bad. She or she does not have to refer you to anybody. In some provinces in Canada you do have to have, a doctor does have to refer you. There's so many other provisions there, but they're trying to expand it to include long-term psychiatric patients, people who are very old. You read about this 104-year-old man who had to go to Switzerland to get help in dying. That doesn't seem right. He wasn't terminal, he wouldn't be eligible. What?
I want to give people a chance to share.
Yeah, okay. Just saying that we can have a better law. That we can have a better law, which I'm sure Dr. Bob would be grateful for too. But we're lucky that we have the one we have and we have to defend it. Now,
Thank you.
Dr. Bob.